It was 3 years ago when my parents committed an act so utterly vile, so unforgivable, that it scorched every last thread of connection I ever thought I had with them. They abandoned my 4-year-old daughter Emma on a street corner during a raging thunderstorm for 12 consecutive hours. Why? Because they needed room in their SUV for a television and a safe they were delivering to my younger sister, Jennifer. The rain had started around noon that Saturday. I dropped Emma off at my parents' house that morning, believing I was leaving her in the safest hands possible, her grandparents. My father, Richard, had been particularly enthusiastic, promising to take her to the park. My mother, Diane, swore they'd bake cookies. These were people I trusted implicitly with my child's safety. My world was about to shatter. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my sister Jennifer called them. She needed help moving furniture into her new condo across town. She just bought an expensive flat-screen TV and wanted their old safe. My parents agreed immediately, promising to be there within the hour. That's where everything went catastrophically wrong. Instead of calling me to pick up Emma, they made a cold, calculated decision. Their Chevy Tahoe had enough space for either my daughter or the items Jennifer needed. They chose the objects. I was at work trying to finish a report when my phone rang at 6:34 p.m. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. A woman's trembling voice came through the speaker. "Ma'am, I'm calling about a little girl standing outside on Maple Street near the shopping center. She's been here alone for at least 20 minutes that I've seen, and it's pouring rain. She keeps saying her grandma and grandpa left her here." My blood turned to ice. A cold dread seized me, chilling me to the bone. "Describe her," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. "She's got brown curly hair, wearing a yellow raincoat with ducks on it. She's crying pretty hard." It was Emma. My Emma. I told the woman I'd be there as fast as I possibly could and begged her to stay with my daughter. Then pure panic. I immediately tried calling my mother's cell phone. Straight to voicemail. My father. No answer. I called my mother again, and on the 4th ring she finally answered, her tone dripping with irritation. "What is it, Rebecca? We're in the middle of something. Where's Emma?" My voice shook, barely containing the terror rising in my chest. "She's fine. We had to help your sister move some things. We'll get her after." "Get her after?" "Mom, where is she right now?" "She's waiting where we left her. Some children just need to wait their turn." The casual cruelty in her voice made my stomach clench so hard it hurt. Before I could even respond, I heard my father's voice in the background. "Diane, tell her we'll deal with it later. The TV is more important right now." The line went dead. They'd hung up on me. Rage and terror propelled me. I grabbed my keys, ran to my car, and called 911 through the hands-free system as I sped off. The operator listened, calm and efficient, as I explained the situation, giving them the intersection and Emma's description. Officers were dispatched immediately. I reached Maple Street in what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding a frantic drum against my ribs. When I pulled up, the woman who'd called was gone, but then I saw her. Emma, huddled under a store awning, alone and soaking wet. Her yellow raincoat, usually so cheerful, was drenched, her little face blotchy and red from crying. "Mommy!" she screamed the moment she saw my car. "Grandma said they'd come back, but they didn't come back." I held her tightly as she sobbed against my shoulder, her small body shivering uncontrollably. I wished I could have thanked the kind stranger who called, but she must have left once I arrived. 2 police officers arrived within minutes. I explained everything, Emma clinging to my leg, her small hand clutching my jeans as if I might vanish too. They took my statement and promised to check for surveillance cameras. "This shopping center likely has coverage," one officer said. They were right. At the police station, a detective named Sarah Ramirez sat with us, her expression darkening as I recounted the phone conversation. The next 72 hours were a blur of investigation. My parents initially lied, claiming they'd only left Emma for a few minutes and that I was overreacting. Then, Detective Ramirez showed them the security footage. The cameras had captured everything. At 2:15 p.m., my father's Tahoe pulled up to the curb. My mother got out, took Emma by the hand, walked her to the sidewalk in front of a closed dry cleaner, pointed to the spot, and Emma nodded. My mother returned to the SUV, and they drove away. The timestamp showed Emma standing there alone as the rain intensified. The footage continued, an agonizing timeline of my daughter's abandonment. She tried to stay under the narrow awning, then sat down, pulling her knees to her chest. Pedestrians walked past, some glancing, most hurrying by. Around 4:30 p.m., a woman approached, spoke briefly, then walked away. Around 6 p.m., Emma started crying visibly. At 7:30 p.m., darkness fell and the rain became a downpour. Emma stood pressed against the door, her small frame barely visible. At 6:28 p.m., another woman appeared. She stopped, knelt to Emma's level, spoke for several minutes, made a phone call and stayed. This had to be the woman who called me. Then, at 6:52 p.m., that woman looked conflicted. She spoke to Emma again, pointed down the street, and after checking her watch reluctantly walked away, looking back twice. Emma stood alone again in the relentless rain for another 2.5 hours. At 9:43 p.m., a new woman, Margaret Chen, carrying an umbrella and a grocery bag, approached Emma. She knelt down, spoke and stayed, holding the umbrella over both of them. My arrival was at 9:57 p.m. 4 hours and 23 minutes. That's how long Emma had been utterly alone before I got there. But she'd been abandoned at that spot for over 7 hours total, with only brief, fleeting interactions from strangers who couldn't stay. 4 days later, Detective Ramirez called me back to the station. She showed me the full harrowing footage. I explained my parents' long-standing favoritism toward Jennifer, but emphasized I never, ever imagined they would endanger a child. We're pursuing charges of child endangerment and neglect, Detective Ramirez told me, her voice firm. The district attorney's office has reviewed the case. This is clear-cut abandonment. She added that Margaret Chun had agreed to testify. My parents were arrested 2 weeks later. The local news devoured the story, the security footage so damning it went viral. The headline screamed, "Grandparents abandoned 4-year-old for over 7 hours to deliver TV to other daughter." The public reaction was explosive. My father's employer, a regional bank where he'd worked for 23 years, placed him on administrative leave. My mother's volunteer position at the community library was terminated. Even their church asked them to step down. Jennifer called me screaming. She blamed me for ruining the family. According to her twisted logic, I should have just picked up Emma myself instead of involving the police. She utterly failed to grasp that I'd been at work, with no knowledge of where my daughter was, or that our parents had deliberately abandoned her. "You're destroying Mom and Dad over nothing," Jennifer shrieked through the phone. Emma was fine. She wasn't hurt. She was 4 years old, alone in a storm for half a day because they prioritized her television, I said, my voice cold and steady. "Don't ever contact me again." I hung up and blocked her number. That was the last direct conversation I had with any of them. By the way, if you're still with me, and I hope you are, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories and moments of truth are always coming your way. The criminal case moved forward. My parents hired an expensive defense attorney who tried to argue they'd simply misjudged the timeline. The security footage obliterated that defense. The prosecutor showed they'd spent 3 hours at Jennifer's condo, arranging furniture and mounting the TV. Phone records proved they'd received and ignored my desperate calls. They were offered a plea deal, 2 years probation, mandatory parenting classes, therapy, and a restraining order. They refused, insisting on going to trial. The trial lasted 6 days. I testified, my voice breaking as I recalled my mother's chilling words. Margaret Chen testified about finding Emma. The security footage was played in its entirety for the jury. Several jurors were visibly emotional, watching a small child stand alone in the rain as hours passed. The jury deliberated for just 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Between the verdict and sentencing, I learned more about my parents' behavior that day than I ever wanted to know. The prosecution obtained their text messages. In the prosecutor's office, I saw the exchanges between my mother and Jennifer. Jennifer, 2:45 p.m. "Where are you guys? I need to get this stuff moved before 6. Mom, 2:47 p.m. "We're on our way. Had to make a quick stop." Jennifer, 3:15 p.m. "Did you remember the furniture pads? Don't want the TV getting scratched." Mom, 3:17 p.m. "Yes, we have everything. Be there in 10 minutes. Not once did Jennifer ask about Emma. Not once did my mother mention abandoning her granddaughter on a street corner. The casual indifference was chilling. My mother had even sent photos to her church group chat at 4:32 p.m. More than 2 hours after abandoning Emma, showing the mounted television in Jennifer's newly organized living room. "So proud of our girl's beautiful new place," she'd written. Someone in the chat had responded, "Where's little Emma today?" My mother's reply, "Rebecca has her." A lie. A direct, calculated lie, while her granddaughter stood terrified in a storm. The prosecutor also found surveillance footage from a gas station. My parents had stopped on their way to Jennifer's place, purchased coffee and snacks, spent 8 minutes browsing. They were laughing, completely relaxed. My father bought a lottery ticket. They acted like it was a normal, pleasant afternoon. The defense tried to argue this showed they weren't in their right minds, had forgotten Emma. The prosecutor shredded that theory, pointing out they had actively lied about her whereabouts, proving consciousness of their wrongdoing. They called Emma's name and told her to wait at that specific spot, confirming it was intentional. I discovered this wasn't even the first time they prioritized Jennifer. Going through old messages, I found a pattern I'd been too trusting to see. Birthday parties missed, holidays cut short, a school recital entirely skipped. All for Jennifer. I'd made excuses then. They were busy. Jennifer needed more support. Asterisk, I convinced myself grandparents didn't have to be perfectly available. But leaving a child in a storm wasn't about unavailability. It was about fundamentally not valuing her existence. During the sentencing hearing, the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I'd spent 3 days writing it, revising every word to convey what this had done to Emma and to me. I stood at the podium and looked directly at my parents. My mother was crying. My father stared at the table. Emma asks me every single day if I'm coming back. I began, my voice shaking but firm. When I drop her off at preschool, she makes me promise 3 times I'll be there at pickup. When I go to the grocery store, she calls me twice to make sure I haven't forgotten her. She's 4 years old, and she's terrified of abandonment because the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally left her standing in a thunderstorm like she was garbage they couldn't be bothered to dispose of properly. My mother let out a sob. I didn't stop. She has nightmares where she's alone and lost, and no one can hear her screaming. She wakes up crying, asking why Grandma and Grandpa didn't love her enough to come back. How do I explain to a 4-year-old that her grandparents valued a television more than her safety? How do I help her understand something I can't understand myself? I detailed the therapy sessions, the regression in her development, the way she'd become clingy and anxious. I explained how I'd had to take leave from work, lost income, and nearly lost my job. How every aspect of our lives had been damaged by their selfish, cruel decision. You had 1,000 opportunities to make a different choice, I said, my voice now raw. You could have called me. You could have brought Emma with you. You could have told Jennifer you'd help her another day. You could have come back after 30 minutes instead of staying for hours. But you didn't, because in that moment, and apparently for years before that, my daughter simply didn't matter to you. My voice broke, but I pushed through. The worst part is that you're not even sorry. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. But you've never once acknowledged that you traumatized a child. You've never said you understand how terrifying it was for her to stand alone in the rain for over 7 hours, watching strangers walk past, while her grandparents delivered furniture. You've just made excuses and blamed me for overreacting. I folded my statement and looked at the judge. They don't deserve leniency. They deserve to understand that children are not disposable, and that failing to protect them has real consequences. When I sat down, the judge nodded slowly. Then she delivered the sentences that would define the rest of my parents' lives. My father was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, my mother to 12 months, with 3 years of probation after release. They were also ordered to pay restitution for my therapy costs and Emma's counseling. The judge's statement was scathing. You made a conscious choice to prioritize material possessions over the safety of a vulnerable child. Your granddaughter stood in a storm for 12 hours because you couldn't be bothered to make a phone call. This court finds your actions reprehensible, and your lack of remorse disturbing. My parents were led away in handcuffs. I felt nothing watching them go. No satisfaction, no sadness, just emptiness where my family used to be. The media coverage intensified. Special segments about child safety and grandparent responsibility ran. My parents' mugshots were shown repeatedly. The public reaction was overwhelmingly on Emma's side. One news anchor, Patricia Delaney, did an entire editorial that went viral. We trust our parents with our children because we believe that bond is sacred. What these grandparents did wasn't just negligent. It was a betrayal of the most fundamental kind. They looked at their 4-year-old granddaughter and decided she was worth less than a television. Let that sink in. The video was shared thousands of times, tagging my parents' friends and former colleagues. A petition demanding my father's bank fire him permanently gathered 40,000 signatures in 3 days. My mother's sister, Aunt Linda, called me shortly after the sentencing. "Rebecca, this has gone too far," she said without preamble. "Your parents made a mistake, but you've turned it into a witch hunt. They're going to jail. Isn't that enough?" A mistake. I kept my voice level though fury burned through me. "Aunt Linda, they left Emma alone for 12 hours. That wasn't an accident. That was a choice. They didn't mean for it to be that long. Things just got away from them. They were at Jennifer's condo for 3 hours arranging furniture. Phone records prove they saw my calls and ignored them. How is that things getting away from them? You're being vindictive. You want to punish them because Jennifer has always been the favorite, and you're jealous." I hung up and blocked her number. I was done explaining basic morality to people who refused to see the truth. But Aunt Linda wasn't finished. She posted on social media about how I was tearing the family apart, using my daughter as a weapon. Her post got attention, but not the kind she wanted. People who'd followed the case flooded her comments with links to the security footage and trial coverage. Someone posted a screenshot showing Emma alone at 9 p.m. in the dark and rain. Another person calculated Emma had been abandoned for longer than my parents spent at Jennifer's. Aunt Linda deleted her post within 6 hours. Then she deleted her entire social media account. I later heard she'd faced significant backlash from her own friends and coworkers. The ripple effects kept spreading. My father's bank initially said they'd hold his position, but public pressure changed that. Customers threatened to close accounts. Employees didn't want to work with him. HR found he'd violated their code of conduct, requiring ethical behavior in personal matters reflecting on the institution. He was terminated. 23 years of career gone because he chose a TV over his granddaughter. My mother faced similar consequences. The community library issued a public statement distancing themselves. Her garden club asked her to resign. Her book club stopped responding. Her yoga studio canceled her membership. One by one, the social connections that had defined her life disappeared. Jennifer lost her job 3 months later. Her employer, a prestigious law firm, had a strict morality clause. When her involvement became public knowledge through news coverage, she was terminated. She'd been the one who demanded the TV delivery. While she hadn't directly abandoned Emma, the public associated her with the incident. Her professional reputation was ruined. She eventually moved to another state, taking a job for half her previous salary. Jennifer actually tried to sue me for defamation, claiming I deliberately damaged her career. The lawsuit was frivolous. My attorney got it dismissed within 60 days. Court records were public. Media coverage was protected speech. I'd never made false statements, only provided factual testimony. The judge wrote that Jennifer was attempting to weaponize the legal system to silence truthful testimony about her role in facilitating child endangerment. Jennifer had to pay my legal fees $12,000. Her attorney withdrew. The State Bar Association opened an inquiry. The failed lawsuit generated a new wave of media coverage. Headlines like "Sister Sues over own role in child abandonment case" made Jennifer's name even more toxic. She sent one vicious email, calling me every horrible name imaginable. I forwarded it to my attorney and Detective Ramirez, then blocked her. My attorney sent a cease and desist letter. She didn't contact me again. Meanwhile, Emma's therapy was progressing slowly. Her therapist, Dr. Hannah Osgood, explained that abandonment trauma in young children could have lasting effects. Emma developed what Dr. Osgood called hypervigilance around separation. She's constantly scanning for signs she'll be left again. Right now, her brain interprets any separation as potentially permanent, Dr. Osgood told me. We're working on helping her understand that temporary separations are normal and safe, but it takes time. Emma couldn't sleep alone anymore. Daycare drop-offs became agonizing. She'd cling to me, crying, begging me not to leave her. Watching my daughter's face crumple with fear every morning broke something inside me. I had to reduce my work hours, a significant pay cut. The financial strain added stress, which Emma picked up on, making her anxiety worse. It was a terrible cycle. The restitution helped, but slowly tied up in legal processes. I started documenting everything for Emma's future: court records, therapy reports, media coverage. Someday she'd want to know. I also started writing her letters to give her when she was older, explaining that none of this was her fault, that she deserved love and protection. My parents served their full sentences. My father was released after 16 months, my mother after 10. When they got out, their lives were completely dismantled. Detective Ramirez informed me the restraining order was still in effect for another 2 years. She'd become something like a friend. Our relationship built on the worst experience of my life. "You're doing everything right," she told me. "The way you've protected your daughter and held people accountable is exactly what she needed." My parents immediately began trying to contact me through intermediaries. A former family friend, Robert, called, saying my parents wanted to apologize properly. I told him that unless the apology came with full acknowledgement, complete responsibility without excuses, and respect for my boundary that they'd never have contact with Emma again, I wasn't interested. Robert called back. "They want to see Emma. They say they've changed. They're her grandparents, she should know them. They abandoned her in a storm for 12 hours. They traumatized her so severely she still has nightmares 2 years later. They lost the privilege of knowing her." Robert tried to argue, but I ended the call and blocked his number. A week later, my parents showed up at Emma's preschool, waiting outside the gate during pickup. Miss Valerie, Emma's teacher, recognized them from the news and called me, keeping Emma inside. I called the police. Officers cited my parents for violating the restraining order. That night, Emma asked why we'd waited inside. I told her it was a scheduling confusion. I smiled and listened while my hands shook with rage. Their retirement savings were drained by legal fees. Their home had to be sold. My father's career was over. My mother couldn't find volunteer work. Their church had moved on. Friends had distanced themselves. I heard they were living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment, my father working as a stock clerk, my mother a receptionist. Part of me wondered if I should feel sympathy. These were the people who raised me, once successful and respected. But then I'd remember Emma's face that night, soaking wet and terrified. The security footage of her standing alone as darkness fell. My mother's words, Some children just need to wait their turn. Sympathy evaporated instantly. They sent Emma birthday cards, which I returned unopened, marked return to sender, restraining order in effect. My father wrote me a letter from prison. My attorney read it, summarizing it as full of justifications, not genuine acceptance of responsibility. My brief response: do not contact me or my daughter. Any future contact will be documented and may result in additional legal action. Intermediaries kept coming. A church member named Susan approached me at the grocery store. Rebecca, I've been praying for you. Your parents are suffering so much. Don't you think enough time has passed? I finally turned to look at her. Susan, do you have children? 3, she said, slightly taken aback. Would you leave one of them alone in a thunderstorm for 12 hours to deliver furniture? Of course not. Then you understand why there's no amount of time that makes this forgivable. Please don't approach me about this again. I took Emma's hand and moved away. Emma is 7 now. She's been in therapy since the incident. She still has nightmares sometimes. She still asks me constantly if I'm coming back when I drop her off. The therapist says she's making genuine progress, but the damage is permanent. I've explained to Emma in age-appropriate ways why she doesn't see her grandparents. She doesn't fully understand yet. Someday she will, and I dread that conversation. Margaret Chen became an unexpected presence in our lives. After testifying, she asked the prosecutor how we were doing. I invited her to coffee. She brought a children's book for Emma. Over the months she visited, bringing books and art supplies. She became like an adoptive grandmother, showing Emma the kind of care and attention my parents never genuinely provided. She was there when my actual parents had literally left her in danger. My extended family fractured completely. I cut off anyone who tried to minimize what happened or suggest I should forgive and forget. This isn't about grudges or revenge. This is about protecting my child from people who proved they couldn't be trusted with her basic safety. They had multiple chances to make different choices. Instead, they left a 4-year-old child standing in a thunderstorm because a television was more important. People ask me if I'll ever forgive them. The answer is no. Forgiveness is something you extend to people who show remorse and make amends. My parents have never acknowledged the full severity of what they did. Every message they've sent included excuses. They're sorry they got caught, not sorry they endangered Emma. Jennifer sent one email claiming she was unfairly punished. I blocked her. The financial destruction, the ruined careers, the jail time, the broken relationships. I didn't cause any of that directly. I simply told the truth about what they did, and let the justice system and society respond accordingly. They destroyed their own lives by making an inexcusable choice and then refusing to take responsibility for it. Emma is my priority. Her safety, her well-being, her ability to trust the adults in her life. My parents shattered that trust in the most traumatic way possible. There's no coming back from that. Sometimes I think about that day, and a rage so intense rises I have to pull over while driving. My baby girl stood alone in the rain for 12 hours. She was scared and cold and didn't understand why the people who were supposed to love her had left her there. She waited and waited, believing they'd come back, until a stranger showed her more compassion than her own grandparents. Other times I feel grateful it wasn't worse. Emma could have been abducted, hit by a car, suffered hypothermia. 1,000 horrible outcomes were possible. Margaret Chen saved my daughter that day. A complete stranger did what my parents wouldn't. I've built a new life now. Emma and I have routines and traditions. We have people who love us reliably. I've made peace with the loss of my original family because what I had with them was never real. Their love was conditional and shallow. They showed their true values when tested. People sometimes say I should let it go for my own peace of mind. But I am at peace. I protected my child. I held people accountable for endangering her. I removed toxic, dangerous individuals from our lives. Those were the right decisions, and I'd make them again. Emma's 7th birthday party was last month. Margaret came, along with 15 of Emma's school friends and their parents. We had a bounce house face painting, a unicorn cake. Emma laughed and played and was beautifully, ordinarily happy. There was a moment when she was showing Margaret a drawing. She hugged Margaret spontaneously and said, "Thank you for staying with me that night." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. So did mine. That's what family actually means. Not blood relation, but showing up when someone needs you. Margaret is more family to us than the people who share our DNA ever were. My parents had one job that day. Don't leave a 4-year-old child alone in a storm. They failed spectacularly because material possessions mattered more to them than their granddaughter's safety. Everything that happened afterward was a direct consequence of that failure. I didn't destroy their lives. They did that themselves when my mother said, "Some children just need to wait their turn," and my father said, "The TV is more important right now." Those words and the choice to leave Emma on that street corner for over 7 hours told me everything I needed to know about who they really are. I just made sure everyone else knew it too. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to redefine what family truly means to you? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.